Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. We're doing an ongoing series with our media partner over at usdailyreview.com, talking about life after professional sports. We have our contributor, Chris Kidd, who's a financial advisor, works a lot with people in many fields, including in sports related, and it's a passion of his because it's one of those areas where you see a lot of trauma, financial trauma happen. These people think that they've hit on their dream, and their dream come true, and it turns out to be a nightmare simply because they don't know what they're doing. And so, by the way, you can learn more about chriskidd.com. You want to add more about what you do, and then introduce your guest for us today.
I'm just a financial coach that basically, long story short, teaches people how to make their money work harder than they have to work for it.
Very good. And then your guest today?
My guest today is David Pessin with PK Law. He is a wealth preservation attorney, and he works with many professional athletes.
Yeah, very good. David, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit about your practice.
Well, it's an interesting practice. I worked earlier in my career in the sports industry. I worked with an agent, and when I was in law school, did some baseball arbitration. I was a college athlete, so I love sports, but I came to understand I didn't want to be an agent, so I went into a fairly traditional area of practice, business and estate planning, kind of gotten to be known in a larger sense as wealth preservation. And then my athlete roots came back to me, and over the last 20 years, I've just developed a pretty sizable practice of professional athletes. And Chris, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. We work in tandem with the financial advisors for our very best results. It's a great teamwork approach.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so basically your background is in the wealth preservation arena, and that's what you did originally, but then it slowly niched into specifically into athletes.
Yeah, and in that position, you end up being, in many respects, from the legal standpoint, a point guard, because once they sort of understand you and trust you with their personal issues, that sort of morphs into everything legal, but I'm not the family lawyer. I'm the person that helps go get the family lawyer. I'm not the bankruptcy lawyer, the person that helps with the bankruptcy lawyer if we need one. Hopefully that's not too often.
Yeah, very good. Chris?
Yeah, well, speaking of bankruptcy lawyers and stuff, you see a lot of professional athletes when they come to the end of their career, or even sometimes in the middle of their career, they really blow it up on the news and stuff with them filing for bankruptcy and stuff. What type of reasons do you see for things like that?
Well, you have the ordinary flotsam and jetsam of people just spending way more money than they think they're spending. They're not even aware of their expenditures. They're certainly not staying on anybody's budget. Most of my athlete clients, in fact, most athlete clients, I would say, start out with a financial advisor, and lots of them don't take the financial advisor's advice. I know of one real prominent former point guard. Fortunately, he has a broadcasting career, but the reality is he got into a lot of real estate deals that his financial advisor, would have advised him not to do had he brought it to his financial advisor's attention. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times they're getting bad advice from people who are on the sidelines. Sometimes they're just flat out not good financial advisors, or people who purport to be financial advisors not well informed. And then there are the business enterprises. Most of the financial advisors for athletes, as I'm sure you're aware, will tell you they'd rather have you in a bunch of municipal bonds than a shopping center deal any day of the week. And so you see the odd sports bar that's going to get opened. I've had that any number of times. My athlete has decided he wants to open a sports bar, catching on his name and likeness. We tell him, look, do a licensing agreement, find the money man for the restaurant and somebody who knows the restaurant business. And sure enough, 6 months later, we're out of business. And the worst part is, in many respects, they don't silo their enterprises. So, for example, they might have the restaurant business, but they'll have personal liability that will leak out to their other assets. So a lot of what we do is trying to silo their separate enterprises so that the vulnerability doesn't spread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's fascinating. I'm curious about that. The reality is that if you're not grown up around money, not familiar with money, if you're not trained about money, you're naturally going to have problems around it, aren't you, to a certain extent?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it varies from sport to sport. those athletes that don't get the huge money early in their careers seem to be better at managing it as they make the big money. Baseball players in particular, you might get a good signing bonus, and while a couple $1,000,000 is huge money to most people, in the world of sports that's not huge. And a baseball player will get that signing bonus, and then he's living on minor league money for the next 4 or 5 years until he becomes a free agent, and he has a much better appreciation of what that money means when he gets the big money. On the other hand, football players, particularly with their short careers, they think that they get a lot of money at once. They're not disciplined in their expenditures. They go through that money. They think, well, there's the next big contract down the line. But for football players, the career is real short. Basketball players are kind of somewhere in the middle. They frequently get a second chance. They may go through their first contract, which are much smaller now under the collective bargaining agreements. That big contract, the second contract, they've had a learning opportunity. So a lot of it is how much phased-in knowledge they get. A lot of it is how much discipline they want to have in learning and taking ownership of their own financial responsibility.
Yep, absolutely, Chris.
Yeah, well, a lot of them, like you said, if they get a big, huge paycheck right off the bat, most of them, I've always said, don't ever make more than $30,000 a year in their life before signing their pro contract. And all of a sudden, they sign a $30 million contract, and like you said, if you can't manage, the small numbers first, then you can go crazy with the big numbers, and they don't seem to ever anticipate that money is just going to stop one day. What kind of things do you say for the athletes to do as far as planning ahead for when that contract actually is finally over and they have to learn how to make money outside of the professional arena?
Well, it's incidentally, the first thing they sometimes have a hard time accepting is the harsh reality of a little entity that is right on top of them, which is IRS. So that when they sign that $2 million signing bonus, depending on where they live. Now, of course, in Texas down there, they miss that state income tax, but everywhere else, you're talking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 45%, maybe higher of their money gone. So that $2 million signing bonus, they just lost $900,000 off the top, but they're still thinking they got the $2 million.
Right.
And if
denial's a very powerful thing, isn't it?
not just some river in Egypt, guys. So a lot of athletes, if you're not an elite athlete, if you're not an elite professional athlete, you can have a career where you don't have to work when you're retired. It's possible, but not likely, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you got two factors. One is you're retired. What do we do when we're retired? We spend money. We take trips. We have hobbies. We go to the golf club. Maybe we go to the casinos. I don't know. I don't do those things. But and you have no money coming in. So if you're not an elite athlete, the best thing you can do is prepare for that, both in terms of having a meaningful life and also having an income. If you are an elite athlete and you're really at the top of your game, you don't really need to work if you structure it right. And I have an athlete client. He's given me permission, so it's not an ethical violation to use his name. He's pretty popular down in the Houston area, Sam Cassell. And I remember him telling me one time he was talking to the rookies when he played in the NBA. He was now a seasoned vet. He said something like, "Guys, you can have 4 Mercedes now, or you can have a Mercedes every year for the rest of your life, but you can't do it both ways." So, I'm really happy. He's one of those guys that he could probably go out and teach these guys a book's worth of lessons on how to make sure that you hold on to your money. He's been great at it. Some of them are really good, I've got to say.
Yep, David Pessin. He's with PK Law, pklaw.com, and, of course, Chris Kidd, chriskidd.com. He is our regular contributor here each week, bringing content on a lot of different subjects. Heavy emphasis, still, on sports business. I think it was a super segment.
Yeah, I agree. That was awesome, David.
David, we appreciate you. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I hope to talk to you again.
You bet. Okay, check out pklaw.com. You can also check out David Pessin and put in PK Law. If you do a Google search, he'll pop up very prominently. And great segment. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Awesome.
When we come back tomorrow, we're going to have much more for you. I do want to encourage you to have a great rest of your day and want to encourage you to spend it right here on this station.